very interested in this topic because I started reading research where scientists were taking people that had type 2 diabetes and exposing them to an hour of comedy. And when they rated the comedy show, many of the participants rated the show on a scale of 1 to 5, a 5, which means for a whole entire hour they laughed. But what they were measuring before and after the comedy show caught my attention, because they were measuring gene expression to see if changing their emotional state was able to, in 1 hour, select and instruct new genes. And in fact, over 20 genes were upregulated just by people changing their mood. So by changing their internal state, they were able to select and instruct new genes that made new proteins. People began to function with diabetes within a normal range or slightly elevated blood sugar levels compared to where their blood sugar levels were every single day. So it caused me to think, okay, if I could take a group of people and measure their gene expression, and for 4 days, ask them to think differently, to make different choices, to have new experiences, and to elevate their emotional state, would it be possible that in 4 days they can begin to change their gene expression? So we selected 32 people in a randomized study. We did some tests to take some cells out of the inside of their mouth, and we wanted to do measurements before they started a workshop, and then we wanted to take another measurement to begin to see if there was a change. And we were measuring 7,500 different gene expressions. That meant that when they stepped outside of routine, when they traded certain emotions for elevated emotions, by beginning to change their inner state, would they be able to signal the gene ahead of the environment? Now, what we found was that in 4 days, the gene that makes new neurons in response to learning and novel experiences was activated. The gene for cellular repair that stimulated stem cells, those transitional cells that go to damaged tissues and repair them, was activated, so there was regeneration going on in the body. The gene for oxidative stress was upregulated so the body could move back into normal health and balance. And antioxidants, anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, that gene was signaled. The gene to build cellular structures, the cytoskeleton of the cell, was activated. More integrity, more regeneration in the cell. 3 genes were activated that began to suppress cancer growth in tumors. And the genes for hormonal balance, metabolic function, and metabolic order were all stimulated within 4 days. 8 genes upregulated. These are all the genes that were activated or upregulated within just 4 days. So it makes sense then, you're not doomed by your genes, that you are your own genetic engineer. So in our workshops around the world, we see many people reverse very serious health conditions like Parkinson's disease or MS or lupus or even rare genetic disorders that medical science really has no solution for. So in order for me to understand how that was possible, by studying gene expression, we now know then that when people begin to heal, they're upregulating new genes and they're downregulating genes that have to do with disease or imbalance. So then I started thinking, is it possible by teaching people how to self-regulate and begin to change their inner state, could it lengthen their life in some way? Is it possible that meditation or contemplative practices on a daily basis could influence a person's future by adding days to their life? So we did another study, and that study was in Palm Springs, California in 2017. And what we did is we randomly selected 32 people, and then we asked these 32 people to commit for 5 days out of a week doing some type of meditation for at least 60 days. But all we wanted them to do is to begin to self-regulate and change their inner state. Now, what we were looking to measure were telomeres. Now, telomeres are the tiny little shoestrings on the end of your DNA. And every time a cell divides, and cells divide about 50 to 75 times, the cell begins to shave off a little bit of that shoestring. Now, stress and the hormones of stress actually accelerate the degeneration of the telomeres and the length of those telomeres. So you can determine a person's biological age, which may be in complete contrast to their chronological age. So we wanted to see then, is it possible that telomeres could actually lengthen and a person could lengthen their life or extend their life in some way? So what we found was 5 people discontinued doing the meditations, which left 27. 20 out of 27 people lengthened their telomeres, which is about 74% of the study. 11 out of the 27 people increased their telomeres by more than 0.05%. It's 40% of the people in the study, and that adds about 4 to 8 days of their life if they live to at least 75. 6 out of the 27 people significantly increased their telomeres between 0.1 and 0.26%. That's 22% of the people involved in the study lengthened their life between 8 to 16 days. Now check this out. One person in the study increased their telomere length within 4 days. Now, I understand that telomeres take time to grow. They're like fingernails or hair. And studies that have been done out of UCLA have shown that men with prostatic cancer, or at least early onset gene expression of possible prostatic cancer, that in 60 days they were able to upregulate new genes for health and downregulate those genes for disease, and at the same time they began to lengthen their telomeres. So when I talked to the scientists involved in the study, I said to them, I'm aware that telomeres take time to lengthen, but we're seeing in our workshops that people are having instantaneous change in their health during a meditation. In other words, in some way we're seeing an instantaneous change, and everything in three-dimensional reality, for something to happen, usually takes time. But if it's energy influencing matter, and it's happening in an instant, and it's not time dependent, that energy or the quantum is influencing matter. Is it possible then that someone could change their telomere expression within 4 days if it's a quantum phenomenon? Well, the scientists paused for about a minute and finally said, theoretically, it's possible. And if one person was able to do it, I would be impressed. And I said, that's all I need. And we had one person able to significantly change their telomere length within 4 days, and that is a quantum phenomenon. So, in a sense, we made history to prove that you can lengthen your life by changing your internal state.